Hello, Brubs. A few years back, I started cataloging all of my ephemera and put it into, well, not all of my ephemera, but the local related stuff, and I put it into a little 8-page newspaper called the Nankin Township Monitor, which is basically the area which it comprised, although a few stories were outside the parameters. But yeah. So now I'm just going to, since it's time consuming, it basically was taking me the entire month to research and write up the stories. So it's too time consuming. I just couldn't do it monthly. Suppose I could have did it on a quarterly basis, but what fun was that, right? Anyway, this news story, which does not fit into an issue itself. Where's the page? Come on. No, it's not going to work, huh? Calling somebody a Nazi long before the age of wokeness. And that concerns a supplemental mileage ration from World War II. United States America Office of Price Administration, and they basically oversaw the prices of goods and ration things. And one of the main ones they were concerned with was gasoline and tires, because obviously you needed fuel and tires for the war machine. This isn't focusing very well, but let's go back to here. And as you can see, this person, let me turn the light on, E.S. Calmerton of Dearborn, Michigan, 12/13/43 to 9/13/43. And this was in relation to some duties or service he provided for the Eloise Hospital. I don't know what the 16 is, but that's what it is. Vehicle license number BD6105. I'm not sure why he gives a P.O. box, but maybe that was his business. I know he was a police officer in Dearborn at the time. The number of gallons of gasoline which each coupon is good for will be publicly announced by OPA. The vehicle license number and state of registration or the fleet identification must be written in ink. Detached coupons are void. Dealer must remove coupons from the book of sale. This book should be returned to your board within 5 days after the beginning date of the valid period. Mileage rationing regulations require you to have your tires inspected before a gasoline ration may be issued or renewed, or a certificate for a tire or tube may be issued. Any person holding a B ration must have his tires inspected and approved within every 4 months on or before June 30th, October 31st, 1943, and February 29th, 1944. Inspections must be at least 60 days apart. And it was signed by Edna Herman of Detroit. The occupants in this book are not valid, or the coupons in this book are not valid unless the lawful holder has signed the certificate below. Obviously, the coupons are missing, but there it is. 839498G. And now for the story, which obviously during World War II, Nazis were a thing. Calling somebody a Nazi started long before the age of wokeness. This 1943 supplemental mileage ration slip for gasoline in some kind of service to Eloise Hospital holds a few hidden gems in the story within the story. During World War II, gasoline and tires were rationed, along with essentials from food to shoes by the Office of Price Administration. The name of the card holder was an E. Stilson Calmerton. I believe his first name was Edward. A military veteran, he served in World War I, and police officer in Dearborn at the time. And I write, while I obviously purchased it for its relation to Eloise Hospital. I'm not sure why this guy highlighted the fact that it was from Eloise, but then sold it for really cheap. I think I paid $4.20 for the whole thing. While I obviously purchased it for its relation to Eloise, there are a few humorous asides in the case of Mr. Calmerton and his family, and a final, potentially ironic one in regards to, and I spelled Calmerton wrong there. Calmerton, he was slapped with the lawsuit by his former mother-in-law, Bertha Dorn, over funeral expenses for his late wife, Gertrude, which she paid in full with a promise for reimbursement. And originally the case was not going to be heard because she, as you'll find out, is listed under an enemy alien's right to sue, or an enemy alien right. What's the term? Registered enemy alien, so basically Germans, Japanese, I'm guessing Italians at the time, whoever was in the Axis. Enemy alien's rights to sue upheld by court. An enemy alien retains the right to bring a civil suit in the state courts, Judge Arthur Webster ruled Thursday in circuit court. The ruling permitted testimony to be taken in a suit brought by Mrs. Bertha Dorn, 72 years old, 7525 Appeline Avenue, Dearborn, against her son-in-law, E. Stilson Calmerton, 851 Oakwood Boulevard, Dearborn, for $1,034, which she advanced to pay the funeral expenses of her daughter, Gertrude Calmerton's wife, in 1940. Calmerton declared that Mrs. Dorn had agreed to defray the funeral costs out of her own pocket. Judge Webster took his decision under advisement. In his response, he denied the charge and claimed that she was a Nazi, a claim which had some circumstantial merit since she did own a copy of Mein Kampf at the time, as stated in the article, and was a registered enemy alien, a classification which I'm guessing allowed FDR to throw Japanese Americans into internment camp. Should be an S. I'll have to edit that too. Mrs. Dorn claimed that Hitler didn't care about her and that the feeling was mutual. What she might have been more offended by was the widower Calmerton's remarriage in 1943, since her daughter had passed away several years beforehand in 1940. Let's read the Hitler issue in suit. A lawsuit started over funeral expenses has developed before Circuit Judge Webster into a bitter dispute over Hitler and Mein Kampf. Mrs. Bertha Dorn, 72 of 7025 Appeline, Dearborn, is claiming $1,034 from her son-in-law, E. Stillman. They spelt it wrong. See, I'm not the only person that needs to edit. Stilson Calmerton of Dearborn, on the ground that he failed to repay the amount loaned him to cover funeral costs for Calmerton's wife, Gertrude, Mrs. Dorn's daughter. Calmerton contends that Mrs. Dorn volunteered to pay the costs and did not bring the matter up until they quarreled over her alleged pro-German statements. She is a registered enemy alien. Plus, you have to remember that this suit took 3 years to be published. And he did remarry in 1943, and that's about right when the suit was filed, because it came to court in February, so you have to imagine it was filed weeks or months before that. So it might have coincided with the fact that he remarried. I mean, he waited 3 years. You give him at least that much credit. She admitted she owned a copy of Mein Kampf, but said she had never read it. Hitler doesn't care about me. Why should I care about him? She said. And hopefully there's more. I did a decent amount of searching for this, for more information on the story, but I couldn't find anything else. Another tidbit of obviously unintentional irony was that Mrs. Dorn's obituary a few years later stated that her deceased husband's name was Adolf. It must have been his middle name because their shared grave marker, her death certificate, and the 1915 burial permit for him back in Milwaukee, where the family was from. Obviously, they were from Milwaukee via Germany since she was an alien. All list him as Gustav, or perhaps it was Mr. Calmerton having some fun at his mother's expense. And you notice that it only lists in her obituary the fact that her husband's name was Adolf, which it wasn't. Mother of the late he could have been nicknamed Adolf, but he died in 1915, so, I don't think there was a stigmatism against Adolfs back in 1915, but there should be because it's a bad name to begin with. Mother of the late Gertrude Calmerton, also survived by 2 nieces and 2 nephews. So, it's possible that he actually put it in the paper since, from what I can tell, the family was from Milwaukee. They're all buried back in Milwaukee. So I'm not sure how they came about coming to Detroit. And I didn't really look into it because it wasn't all that important. Regardless, I seem to have a knack with picking up artifacts that have rather interesting backstories. This $4.20 purchase turned into a rather amusing adventure. Edward Stilson Calmerton passed away in 1960. And there's the burial permit showing Gustav Dorn in Milwaukee in 1915. And their shared tombstone says Gustav and Bertha, but like I said, she was buried in 49 or 48, so she could have deferred to Gustav instead of Adolf, but all the legal documents seem to indicate that his first name was Gustav. And back to the marriage. Any joy in the new Mrs. Calmerton's marriage would be shattered in early 1945 when her son, Richard Gibson, was killed in action in the South Pacific. You can see Mrs. Bess Calmerton. Miss Bess Calmerton, Dearborn, and father Harold Gibson, who will come into play here shortly. Bess lived to be 85 and was buried next to her first husband, Harold Wilcox Gibson, whose find-a-grave location of death is listed as Eloise in 1953. And thus, we've unwittingly come full circle. Though the obituary listed on his memorial states that he died in his daughter's residence, another from an Ann Arbor paper states that he died in Wayne, where Eloise was then located. It has since been incorporated into the city of Westland's boundaries. The stigma of dying at Eloise, which was a former insane asylum and poorhouse, may have precipitated the first scenario. I have contacted the creator of the memorial to see what his source was for Eloise. He has not responded. But as you can see here, Harold W. Gibson, former resident of Howell Passes. Harold W. Gibson, 58, a former Howell resident, died yesterday in Wayne. He had at one time resided with a daughter, Mrs. June Park, in Howell. Mr. Gibson was born December 25th, 1894 in Detroit. Survivors besides Mrs. Park include another daughter, Mrs. Caroline English of Spokane, Washington, and a sister, Mrs. Alice Kendall of St. Clair, Michigan. Funeral services will be held at 9 a.m. Wednesday at the St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Howell. Burial will be in Mount Olivet Cemetery. Yeah, It's crazy that the story, and I had not intended to even include Gibson, but I just happened to look at her gravestone, and it's with Mr. Gibson and not Mr. Kelmerton. Although, in her defense, Kelmerton, who was called Cal, I believe is buried in San Diego. I'm not sure why, but that's where he seems to have ended up, was San Diego. It mentions that he had a stepdaughter in Howell, so it's not like he was unfriendly with his wife when he died. I think in, what year did he die? 60? I don't remember. Yeah, 1960. Why he was in San Diego, I don't know. Well, is there a national cemetery there? Because I know he was a veteran, so maybe that's why he was placed in San Diego. I don't really know about that sort of thing, but there we go. Anyway, I'll stop there because I'm belaboring the point. All that came from a little slip that I ordered on eBay for $4.